Mental hygiene and inspired thinking, those are two subjects that I'd like to briefly share my thoughts on. Next Tuesday on March 30th, I will be starting my first online session called Embodied Doorways into the GeneKeys. And for that session, I've been exploring GeneKey 61. And it's got the shadow of psychosis and the gift of inspiration. And for me, lots of my contemplation and looking how things show up in my own life happen by, having something in the background. I choose the theme of inspiration and then I go about my day and something comes up. So last weekend, I watched a documentary about hygiene and the history of hygiene. And it didn't talk at all about mental hygiene, but I think in our time and age, it's something very relevant. And for some years, I've been very conscious about what kind of information am I absorbing. So when we look at hygiene, it's often like, what's my contact with the outer world? And so it's like, washing your hands, all that kind of stuff. And, you can choose more like how much information am I taking in? What kind of information am I taking in? And I think this is something I think many people might have thought about. So one of the things that I found really interesting was, is there an aspect of mental hygiene in how my brain is processing information and making sense of it? And it somehow relates to, as a body worker, I've worked with hundreds of people, and when they lie on the table and we're working on the head, to me it often feels like the head, like anything behind the eyes and where the brain actually sits, is like a black box. People have no body awareness. And it's a curious thing that, something we use a lot. Like I haven't met a single person in my work that says, I'm a head person. I learned to live in my head. Like people say those things all the time. Yet when it comes to the physical awareness, the body awareness, there's very little we are aware of or in the area of the brain. And also like when it comes to relaxing muscles, like we're really good at, moving and sort of not very good at relaxing, but actually moving consciously the muscles. When it comes to tensions we have in the forehead or on the skull, that we have very little control over it. And so in this upcoming session, I'll offer some embodied practices of like how to relax the forehead, how to regain awareness of the space between the eyes and the head. Something I love. We'll also be doing some breathing. So I don't have any answers, but I think it's very interesting when you look at your own mental hygiene is, how am I using information? A dear friend of mine who's in the creative industries, she once said to me that in her field of work, there's this saying of never trust an idea that comes from a closed system. And it's like meant like when you were by yourself and it's just your own brain operating, usually not a lot of good ideas come out of it. And so I think just exploring of like, it's important what information you're taking in, but also understanding, becoming aware of the process, what you're doing of it. Is it always to justify your opinion or to look for the problem or, to judge a situation or to find confidence in thinking that you understand something? So kind of like getting a grasp of this idea of how am I processing, not just what I'm taking in, but how I'm processing, I find really an important aspect of mental hygiene, because it's something, once we become aware, we can say, that's a thought that's popping up, I'll just leave it. And you stop pursuing this spiral that's kind of a closed system where nothing new happens. And this way, the mental hygiene kind of brings me to the next step. So once I'm aware of the process where my thinking isn't very productive, it's kind of like this closed loop, closing in, energy reducing kind of thinking, where I get stuck often. The opposite would be inspired thinking, and that's the gift of the 61st GeneKey. So it's inspiration. It has to do with inspiro, spiro, the breath. It's like, as soon as you start breathing, you're in conversation with the world again, and this is where new ideas come from. So I don't have answers. I only can know what things I'm finding out about myself and for myself. But the question I'd like to pose or invite you to ponder is, how do you know your thinking is inspired? And how can you tell when you're kind of stuck in this closed loop thinking? That's it. Like I only have questions. A lot of my contemplations lead to more and more questions, and I know that I'm on the right path when I start having fun with them and I kind of find out new things. If you're curious, join me for the online gathering next Tuesday. It'd be a lot of fun exploring it with you. We'll do at least 2 exercises for the eyes. Definitely a breathing exercise and exploring how breathing plays into our thinking and when we have kind of like a disconnect and we aren't anchored in the present moment and in our bodies. And possibly also something basically just generally to relax the skull. So that's what I've planned, but sometimes, spontaneously from whatever comes back from the group, I'll add something else. I'm very excited about this, and I'm happy to share my thoughts on those different themes that also show up in the GeneKeys. I hope you have a fun and curious day and you'll find some inspiration, and hope to see you soon. Bye.